Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Diversity in Water Speaker Series. I'm very pleased to welcome our first speaker from Ohio EPA, my colleague, Tya Darden. So just a few housekeeping items. Please mute your microphone. We'd also appreciate it if you would introduce yourself in the chat, let us know who you work for, where you're based out of, and if we will have a Q&A session at the end. So feel free to use the chat box to ask any questions, and then we'll ask them after Tya's presentation. We will be recording this session, and it'll be up probably tomorrow sometime, if not tonight, on the Diversity in Water YouTube. All right, and then just to kind of go through how this, the speaker series started and kind of how AWWA ties in, there are two key committees that are involved with this effort. The first is the Ohio AWWA Diversity Committee. The Diversity Committee is really here to proactively promote diversity in the water industry. It's open. It's an open committee. So if you're interested, I'm in that committee as well. So you can just contact me at megan.shortridge@epa.ohio.gov, and I would be happy to connect you. It's a really good way also to get involved with the conference. We put on things with the annual state conference. So if that's something that might be of interest to you, don't hesitate to reach out. The Young Professionals Committee of OAWWA is a really fun group to get involved with as well. Technically, young professionals are below the age of 35 or have 10 years or less of experience, but they don't really care. Get involved. They do all sorts of happy hours, really just good way of getting connected with others. It's really fun because you have people that you know at the state conference to kind of hang out and just learn from each other. And with that, we are honored to present Tya Darden. So I will read Tya's bio, and then I will hand it over to Tya. Tya Darden is the manager of the Compliance Assurance Section at the Ohio EPA in the Division of Drinking and Groundwaters. She manages a staff of 14. Cass is responsible for preparing all enforcement actions for the division, ensuring that all division rules are reviewed and updated, maintaining chemical compliance programs across the state. Tya started at Ohio EPA in 2007 as an environmental specialist, where she inspected drinking water plants, reviewed plans, and assisted water systems with agency regulations, and helped provide adequate, safe drinking water to residents and communities. Tya has always been enthusiastic about drinking water and all things related to the environment, including safe drinking water and recycling. Tya is also passionate about giving back to her community, especially empowering young women and girls to reach their goals. She believes that representation is important and therefore has volunteered her time to speak at many schools and organizations, including Women in Science, Dayton and Columbus Water Festivals, high school and college career fairs and science fairs, and graduations. Prior to the agency, Tya worked at Valero Energy Corporation as an environmental engineer. She earned a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering and an MBA from the University of Dayton. She graduated from Meadowdale High School as salutatorian of her class. In her spare time, Tya enjoys traveling, nature walks, reading memoirs, dance fitness, and spending time with her humongous family and fostering young kids. We are so excited to welcome Tya tonight. And with that, I will pass it over to Tya.
All right, thank you, Megan. And I'm gonna try to go ahead and share my screen. So you guys tell me when you can see it.
That looks good.
Okay, all right. Okay, so Megan started out with just some of my bio, some of what I've done and where I've been. But I want to tell you guys a little bit more about me. Um, did the slides advance? I can't tell.
No, Tia, before you continue, Megan, it looks like you're still sharing your screen, so we cannot see.
Okay.
There we go.
So Megan, you're not sharing anymore? Okay, I'll try to share again.
Nope. No, I think we're seeing yours, Tia. You're good to go.
Oh, okay, cool. All right. Okay. So I am not seeing it. Just a second here. Okay, so are you seeing my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Thanks, everybody. A little bit of technical difficulties. Thank you for spending some of your evening with me to learn a little bit more about my career path. Like Megan said, I'm currently an environmental manager at Ohio EPA in the Division of Drinking and Groundwaters. Our compliance assurance section, I've been there for 17 years, which is crazy, but we'll kind of dive into that a little bit later. All right, so who am I? I am a lover of nature, as this picture shows. I love parks and beaches and lakes and trees, water, of course. Nature brings me calmness, serenity, and just a lot of joy. So I've always had this passion for the environment, which really aligns with what I do now. And we're going to kind of discuss that a little more in the presentation. But if we see in the middle there, that picture, this is in Oahu, Hawaii. This is a tree that I was just obsessed with, again, because I just love nature. And then around are some other pictures from some of the different parks that I hike at or that I've been to with friends and sometimes even alone. But definitely a lover of the environment, and it just really is basically why I do what I do. Okay, so a little more about me. So I'm from the city of Dayton, Ohio, which is in the background here. If you guys can see on the left-hand side, that's the Riverscape area downtown. I grew up mainly in the inner city in the 80s, which was a long time ago. It was probably, my neighborhood was probably what we would call like a disadvantaged community nowadays. It was a majority African-American neighborhood. In the first like 10 years of my life, I knew everybody on my block and in my whole neighborhood. I can go out and play until the street lights came on, or, you know, when I wanted to come in and eat a meal. And also I lived down the street from a park in the city. And so I played there almost every day, you know, even in the winter. My neighborhood had block parties and just a lot of families and a lot of sharing. Everybody kind of knew everybody's business, maybe somewhat too much. I didn't really recognize that it was a disadvantaged community at that time. I didn't recognize like crime or drugs or anything like that as being like super dangerous, because that was just kind of a part of life. As you can see here on the upper right hand side, I grew up in a family of 6. I'm the youngest of 4 children. I'd say we weren't well-to-do. We didn't have a lot materially, but I was a pretty good kid. I followed the rules for the most part. I did very well in school, and I always had a lot of friends and an outgoing personality, and I loved to dance and to socialize. I knew kind of at a very young age that I didn't want to live in poverty, and that education was going to be the way to opportunity for me. So if I didn't do anything else, I was a really great student. I attended city schools, public schools my entire life in the city of Dayton. And yes, we didn't have a lot of the same resources as private schools or ones in more prestigious neighborhoods. One of the things I was thinking about as I was putting together this presentation is I graduated in 1997, and we didn't really have computers in my school. We had like, I don't know, typing class, or I think we had a math program that was on computers, but they were just those old clunky, you know, computers that you get to use every now and again. It was like a special thing for you to be able to use that. So in a lot of schools, you know, they had already started kids being on the computer, on the internet, things like that. And we didn't have that. But again, we did have community, and I felt very much a part of that community there. As you can see in the picture, bottom right hand, that's my immediate family. So it expanded very rapidly. And this is just a picture of my parents and my siblings and in-laws, and then nieces and nephews, and also a great niece and a great nephew in the picture. And this picture is pretty old, so it's more than double that size now. Okay, so let's talk about my education. So growing up, my favorite subject has always been math. I always excelled at it, and math just made sense to me. My teachers encouraged engineering because of my love for math. I was in a program called the Right Step program at Wright State University. For those who haven't heard of it, it's a program where inner city youth who excelled in school were bused to Wright State University for several weeks in the summer. So it's kind of like summer school. We took technical courses in science and math and also college prep. And then they also had engineers and other technical professionals who would come in and talk to us about their career paths. Then for each year a student completed the summer at Wright State, they received a 1-year full academic scholarship. So by the time I finished high school, I had a 4-year full tuition scholarship to Wright State University, and I plan to pursue engineering. I think this was a great program for youth. Not only did it keep good students really focused on their career goals in college, but it also kept a lot of kids safe during the summers. And it exposed a lot of kids to a college environment very early on who may not have had that opportunity if it were not for the program. You were on a college campus all day. So you got very comfortable with, seeing what goes on a college campus or what happens on a college campus. And even to this day, I still talk with some of the mentors who administered the program. The mentors were professionals in the city. Many were engineers, and they were all people of color. So it was one of the first instances of me seeing people who looked like me, women included, working in engineering, and even some having leadership positions at these large companies in the city of Dayton. So I'm very, very grateful for the experience that I had there. I attended Meadowdale High School in the city of Dayton, as Megan said. There was an international baccalaureate program there. So at the time, there were only 2 schools in the state who had the program. So it was a really big deal back then for a public inner city school to have it. IB is a rigorous academic program. It's kind of like AP or advanced placement classes, but IB was more internationally recognized back then. So it was basically like college prep, and I was able to take advanced courses in every subject, including math and foreign language. So by the time I graduated, I'd taken Calculus 3, which really put me ahead when I got to college. So here I am, I'm in the Right Step program during the summers, and then also the IB program in high school, and math and science were my focus. I actually didn't really love science. I could not stand the thought of dissecting things in biology. I had no interest in the medical field. But one class really changed my mind about science, and that was chemistry. I love chemistry mainly because of the balancing of equations, which involved my favorite subject, math. And also, I had a really great teacher who encouraged me. Then on top of that, I enjoyed the chemistry lab, seeing reactions and formulating of different compounds. So it was really easy for me to choose chemical engineering. Because I was in the International Baccalaureate program and I took these advanced placement courses, I was able to test out of at least 2 classes for college, English and History 101. And this is a really big deal because of how much college courses cost, and also because of like the prerequisites that you have to do before you can take other classes. This IB program, it was very much so a sacrifice, and it was difficult, but it was a good lesson for me that hard work pays off. And also, you can't always take the easy road just because it's easy. That's not always the right decision. In life, just about anything that you really want is going to involve some level of difficulty. So I've never really been afraid of hard work. I graduated from Meadowdale as salutatorian of my class, and I had a full ride to several universities. My intention was to go out of state for college and attend an HBCU, or a historically Black college or university. I was a first generation college student, and I really had no idea how to choose like the best college for my major and my intentions. I had actually never really spent any significant time away from home or out of state. My family didn't really vacation. So I just applied to every school I could think of, and I was starting to kind of weigh my options. And one day, my senior year, my school counselor invited me to go on a day trip to see the University of Dayton. And I hadn't even considered the University of Dayton because I was set on going out of town and going to an HBCU. My first impression with UD was that the campus was beautiful. There was a very, very strong sense of community there. It wasn't just a place to learn academics, but to grow into a whole person. So I ended up at UD, and I had a very, very beautiful experience there. But going from Meadowdale High School in the city of Dayton and inner city of Dayton to the University of Dayton, can anyone guess what I experienced my first year? And I invite you to just chat in what you think I might have experienced. And Megan, if you can see it, that would be great because I can't really see the chat. But I'll give it a second here. Okay, so basically I experienced complete culture shock. I went from an inner city 95% Black school, neighborhood family, teachers, to a predominantly white private Catholic university. So when we start to think of diversity, this is one of the first experiences where I truly knew and felt that I was different than the majority of the students there, especially in the field of chemical engineering. I had one female engineering professor the entire time I was there, and maybe one or two African-American professors, not one in engineering. I was also the only Black chemical engineering student in my class. But the university did have something that was called MEP, or the Minority Engineering Program. It was a part of a scholarship program where the engineering students of color were mentored, and tutoring and study sessions were required. Former students of the program who were working in the field would come in and speak to us. And this helped us build community and also confidence that we too could succeed and graduate. And again, it was just a really good experience for me. Overall, at the University of Dayton, I was challenged to the max. My first project was in the environmental field. It was to build sand filters for a water treatment plant. So we were given parameters and different types of sand plus rocks. And, of course, we could use the water there in the lab. And we were to figure out how best to make this filter so that it would deliver the cleanest water. And I absolutely love the project. And from there, I kind of started to investigate more environmental classes. I took like environmental chemistry, environmental law, environmental business, anything that I could find that piqued my interest. At UD, I didn't just do academics. I met some of my closest friends at UD. I was in several activities and clubs, and I learned a lot of leadership skills and also how to work with a team of diverse people. In 2002, I graduated from UD with my undergrad, but I stayed at the university for another 2 years to get my master's in business administration. So it took me 5 years to graduate from undergrad and then another 2 years. I knew I wanted a master's degree, and I had been a resident assistant for 3 years in undergrad. So I had an opportunity to either find a full-time job or try to get a resident director position where I would supervise the resident assistants and I lived on campus, and in turn, the university would pay for me to take classes for my master's. So I stayed because my thinking back then was that I was already pretty burned out with school and I wanted to get it finished. And also it gave me more time to really think about what industry I wanted to be in. And it even opened doors in case I one day wanted to be in management. So I'm very glad that I went straight through and did that. During my time in college, I interned at a pump and valve manufacturer in the city of Dayton. This was also through a program with the city of Dayton where inner city gifted youth partnered with companies in Dayton to try to give those students opportunities for work after they graduated college. In turn, the students received a scholarship from the company and also the summer internship. I worked more in materials engineering and metallurgy there. And I also worked at the quality lab at the company, testing some of the pump and valve products to make sure that they were in alignment with company standards. And I did enjoy working in the lab, but I didn't really feel that this was something I wanted to do long term. I wasn't really passionate about manufacturing, but I'm still very, very thankful for this experience because I never had a summer where I wasn't working or I had to look for an internship or, or just, being idle. And that really helps. We know college students have no money. So that really helped. It really helped me, but it also trained me to always be productive on a daily basis. And I also gained some mentors from that internship. Okay, so my first job out of college was as an environmental engineer at Primcore Refinery in Lima, Ohio, as it shows in that middle picture there. It eventually was purchased by Valero Energy, which at the time was the largest oil refinery in the United States. I'm sure you guys have seen the Valero gas stations now, but when I started working there, I don't think we had Valero gas stations in Ohio. So this was an oil refinery and it produced like different types of fuel, mainly like diesel fuel, jet fuel, and about 25% of the gasoline in Ohio. And my job was mainly to calculate and report environmental air releases, mostly like when we had an upset at the plant. I also coordinated some stack testing there for like our thermal oxidizers. I worked with the Ohio EPA in that region quite a bit. So that would have been like our Northwest District office. And you'll see here in a picture, this is me inside of a fluid catalytic cracker or an FCC. The FCC is basically the workhorse of the refinery. It's really, really an important piece of the refinery. It's basically a big old separator is all it is. It's where the actual crude oil comes in and then it separates it through a chemical reaction in high heat into those fuel products like gasoline. So it's really the first step in separating. So here in a picture, I am spraying feed nozzles that are bad during a shutdown. So I'm inside of the vessel. The ones in red are ones that need to be repaired before the reactor is put online. What you guys kind of don't see in the picture is that I have a harness. You see I have like the gas mask. If I took one wrong step, I would have definitely been badly hurt or for sure worse. But the chemistry here and the science that I saw, if you guys just see the refinery, if you've ever seen a refinery, that's a picture there on the left bottom at night. It's amazing to see all of the technology and the science there. It really is amazing to witness. But again, I was trying to figure out what I truly wanted to do with my degrees. And honestly, money didn't motivate me as much as I thought it would when I was in college. So here I am in Lima, Ohio, which the acronym for Lima is Lost in Middle America. And, just being very honest, I didn't enjoy being there. It was lonely. All of my friends, family, no one was there with me. And I really kind of struggled there socially. At heart, I'm a city girl, and I was a very young person at the time. I needed culture, I needed entertainment. There wasn't even an airport there, and I wasn't very thrilled with what I did or with the business. I really had grown to have more of a love for the environment and for nature, and I didn't just want to make money. I wanted to do something that actually mattered and aligned with my values. So, I'm going to give you guys another opportunity to chat in. What do you all think that I did?
And Tia, they had nailed the culture shock in the chat. I didn't get to unmute myself, but they did nail the last one.
Perfect. Thank you.
traveled abroad, Samira says. Went back home, moved.
Okay, you guys are right. It was just best for me to leave. I started interviewing for new jobs, and I had several interviews. I was able to land a couple positions, and I chose Ohio EPA, and so I landed a position back in the city of Dayton. So I moved from Lima back to the city of Dayton. All right, so in 2007, I started working at the Ohio EPA as an environmental specialist in the drinking water division. And my major duties were to inspect drinking water treatment facilities to ensure that they were complying with the rules and laws that are based on like our Federal Safe Drinking Water Act. To make it simple, as an inspector, I just follow the drinking water. So I'm looking at the drinking water from the well all the way until the tap. So I tell people when they ask what I do or what I did at that time, I tell people that we're like the environmental police. And so, you know, if we see something that is going to harm the environment, then we have to, you know, protect the environment. So just like the police, they protect and serve. But of course, I know it's a different, you know, category, but we also protect and serve. It's just with the environment. So I might be inspecting a well, you know, is the cap, is it bolted and is it screwed on? Are there visible holes in the casing or depression around the casing? Is the cap properly vented and screened? Then once water comes from the well, I look at the pressure gauge to make sure the well is cycling on and off properly, check the pressure tanks to make sure they were working properly, not waterlogged or leaking water. I checked to see where the water system was doing bacteria sampling and make sure it's like an approved location. I'd look at the treatment units, make sure there was secondary containment for any chemicals. If they had a filtration system, I would observe a backwash and make sure that the water went from murky to clear with a backwash. I'd also measure like the chlorine residuals at different locations in the water system. Just if you don't know, we require at least a 0.2 milligram per liter free chlorine or 1 milligram per liter total chlorine in the distribution system. And this is to inactivate viruses. And this could vary. I could be at a large city plant like the city of Columbus or Springfield or Dayton even, or I could be at a small mobile home park that just supplies water to its residents. Another one of my duties was to review detailed plan drawings for water lines, wells, storage tanks, and water treatment plants. So before a water line can be put into service or constructed, detailed plans have to be approved by Ohio EPA. For water lines, some of the main things we checked is that the water line is at least 4 feet below grade and that the water line does not cross under a sanitary sewer or it isn't too close to any other utilities. So I'm going to give you guys another instance to chat in, trying to keep this a little bit interactive. Does anyone know why we will want the water line to be at least 4 foot below grade? Can chat in. I'll give you a second.
Let's see, we've got prevents freezing. Any other ideas?
Okay, yep, that is definitely the case. So in Ohio, we know it gets very cold in the winter and the ground freezes, and we wouldn't want the water line to freeze and burst. So in more southern Ohio or other areas, water lines do not have to be at least 4 foot below grade. We've even at times accepted like 3.5 feet if we can make sure that frost line is it's covered with the frost line. But we want to make sure that the water line doesn't freeze. So that's just one of the things, something very basic and simple that we would check on these drawings. And I had to learn all of this because this is more like civil engineering. And of course, you guys know my degree was in chemical engineering. So I had to really just be humble and learn all of this. Also, as the inspector, you're the main contact for the water system. So I would have about 30 large water systems, well, small and large water systems, in addition to maybe 120 sets of plans each year. So I kept pretty busy as an environmental specialist. Okay, so I'm going to backtrack a little bit just so we're all on the same page. And I just want to give some really basic information about public water systems and how water is treated so that you all can understand what we do at Ohio EPA. So there's two different types of sources for water. That's groundwater, which will be from wells that pump water from the ground. And then there's what we call surface water, which would be from above ground sources of water like reservoirs, lakes, etc. And here's another chance to chat in. Which one do you think would be easier to treat for drinking water? Groundwater or surface water?
All right, looks like 1 vote for surface water, three votes for groundwater, 4 votes, a lot of votes for groundwater.
Yeah, it would be groundwater. And the way I explain that to people is some of the things that we are trying to filter, the ground is a natural filtration source. So the wells, of course, are normally the water is much easier to treat than surface water. Okay, so let me just give you some basics here. So water comes in, and then there may be like a mixing of chemicals to get the water ready for filtration. So as you see here, like that first step, it says coagulation and chemicals added. So what they're doing there in layman's term is they're just adding chemicals. So with something with a positive charge, normally salts, so that they can bond these particles together to form larger particles. So mainly what we're trying to do is we're trying to get everything ready to be filtered. And you see in the next step, it's called flocculation. So this is a gentle mixing of the water to form larger and heavier particles called floc. So you're just taking what you have coagulated with the floc, and then you're just mixing it more and forming larger particles. So you want to form these big globs of particles. And then you want to take it to sedimentation, which you want to settle out that floc. So you have the floc is heavier than the water, and so it's on the bottom. So dirty water on the bottom, clean water on top. And it's, again, just a separating. And then once you go through the filters, you're removing most of those particles. And so as the water passes through the sand and gravel filters or whatever kind of filters you have, it's removing like dust, germs, viruses, parasites, bacteria, and all of that. And then after that, there's disinfection, which in Ohio, we add chlorine to kill like any remaining parasites or viruses or bacteria. And we keep the water safe as it travels throughout the distribution, like you guys see it normally into a tower and then into a home. It'll have just a slight amount of chlorine to make sure that any of those remaining things are killed. So this is a basic water treatment plant process. Everything about this in your smaller water systems are going to be much smaller, and it may not have all these steps. In your larger water treatment plants, these are the basic steps. It's just bigger. That's it. Okay, so this is what a typical small public water system treatment train would look like. Water comes from the well. There's like a pressure tank and a pressure gauge. There's probably a sampling point that you can use there. And then sometimes there's like a cartridge filter or something like that. And then more than likely in Ohio, you're going to have like a water softener. So you got your brine tank. This is where your salt and your water is. And then this is the actual softener. And then maybe another sampling point and pressure tank and then or meter. And then out the treated water goes out. So if it's a community public water system, then it will have chlorine disinfection, because in Ohio, we require it for all community public water systems. But every state does not require it if the system gets water only from groundwater, and the feds don't require it either. But in Ohio, we do that for added protection. maybe also just a little basic knowledge in Ohio. So we have jurisdiction over all public water systems. You are a public water system if you have 15 or more service connections, or if you serve 25 or more people more than 60 days out of the year. So to make it simple for you guys, if you're a church and you got 25 people that attend and you have the ability to serve water for drinking, hand washing, cooking, etc., or whatever, you just have a water fountain, then you are a public water system. If you are a school and you have wells, you serve water to more than 25 people through drinking fountains or whatever, then you are a public water system. If you are a mobile home park, same thing, you are a public water system. For water systems that do not meet these requirements, that they don't have, 25 or more people or what have you, the health department deals with them. They have jurisdiction. So the health department has jurisdiction over residential and ones that do not meet our requirements. But for the most part, we have a lot of water systems. I think we have almost 5,000 water systems in Ohio. Depending on the size of the system, that dictates the monitoring requirements for the system. So the more people would have access to the water, then the more requirements we would have for them. So community water systems, those are the ones that are like the larger ones. And they have like residents that are drinking the water all day or night, or have access to the water day or night, meaning people live there. So this will be like all of your cities, your mobile home parks, your nursing homes, places like that. And then our non-transient, non-community systems, they're serving the same amount of people, at least 25 people over 6 months of the year. But it could be like schools, hospitals, factories. So these people don't live there, but they do have access to the water on a daily basis. And then we have transient non-community systems where they serve at least 25 people over 60 days a year, but it's different people. So it's people, transient communities coming in and out. So it could be like a campground, a restaurant, a gas station. And then our agricultural migrant labor camps, we regulate them also, even if regardless if they have the minimum amount or not. So that's just kind of like a setting of what you would see between these systems. But I want to show you kind of like what you really see in the field as some of these smaller systems, and that's what I'm focused on today. So this is a typical small water treatment plant. You got your like water softeners, you got like pressure tanks. This is probably chlorine disinfection. That's probably your salt there. And this is probably the whole thing. This is probably the whole thing other than maybe a well. This is what you would typically see when you go to these smaller systems. So here are just some of the things when we inspect water treatment plants. These are just things at wells that we would cite violations for. So holes in like a casing, that obviously would allow surface water intrusion into the well. So we would cite a violation for that. In some of these bottom pictures here, the electrical conduit for the well, it's not secured to the well cap. It's exposed. The well cap might not be secured. As we see here, there's a beehive, if you guys can see that, just up under the cap of the well there. So all of these things we would cite violation for. An animal feedlot, obviously we would not want to have animals and manure get into the aquifer and contaminate it or be anywhere near that drinking water well. We won't want to do anything that could potentially contaminate the aquifer. This is another chance to chat in here. And this picture here with the well in the middle of a parking lot with these yellow boulders kind of around it. Why would we require that the well have these boulders around it? I'll give you just a second to chat in.
All right, no guesses so far. To avoid someone hitting it. So no one hits it.
Yep. Yeah. That's the answer.
Yeah.
Thanks, Megan. That's the answer. We require wells to be protected from you guys will be amazed at how much we see this in the field. Tractors, lawnmowers, even cars hit wells. We see this all the time. And so we require that it be protected. And, again, not being a geologist or having education on wells, These are all the things that I had to do, that I had to learn on the job training. But in doing inspections and asking questions, I was able to learn. And that's just another lesson for you guys. Don't be afraid to ask those questions, and be humble enough to learn. It doesn't matter what degrees you have or what you've done in life. You can always learn something that'll make you more valuable and enhance whatever skills you already have. All right, now I want to talk to you guys about some of my major work wins. And I was advised to kind of keep this a little more general, and not, most of what we do is a public record. And so you can pretty much find records on any water system that we deal with, because it's all public record. But I just want to tell you some of my major work wins, and I'm just going to use general terms. I'm not going to use names. But these projects were near and dear to my heart and excited my passion for drinking water. So this particular mobile home park here, it had over 500 residents. So it was a very large park. It was hard to even hammer down who owned the park or managed the park, because a lot of times they're owned by these LLCs, and you just, they don't tell you, who is there that can make decisions. But this system had just been neglected, doing maintenance, like on their water systems. Their pressure tanks were all leaking. The iron and manganese filtration system was no longer filtering. There was oftentimes no chlorine residual in the distribution system. And then on top of that, the electric bills weren't being paid. So the water and the wastewater system were not able to function if the electrical was cut off. And that actually happened a couple of times. So what did we do? My boss required that I do like increased inspection. So at one point I was going out there, once a week. It went to twice a week. At one point it was every day. We coordinated with the health department inspector and also our wastewater or division of surface water. And we visited the system. We would check the water pressure, check to make sure there were no outages. We would make sure that the electrical was on. We would measure chlorine residuals. We would check to make sure that the operator was coming on site as required. It was 3 days a week at that time. And we also referred the system to our enforcement section. Of course, we wrote like notices of violation, and we even met with the HOA. And eventually, between all of the coordination, enforcement, attorneys, et cetera, the mobile home park owners were finally removed. The water system got 2 new wells, an upgraded treatment system, and 2 members of the HOA actually became the park managers. Okay, so this is another mobile home park. It was a smaller park. The major problem there was arsenic contamination. Our maximum contaminant level for arsenic in drinking water is 10 micrograms per liter. It's a running annual average, so it's based on four quarters, and the park was running anywhere from 12 to 15. Arsenic is toxic above the MCL, and it's a known carcinogen. And at this particular park, most, if not all, of the park residents spoke Spanish as their first language, and they had really limited English. And some of them, didn't speak English at all. And as we know, arsenic, it doesn't have a taste, an odor, a smell. And if it was a contaminant like a high salt content or even sulfur, the average person would just naturally, spit the water out or not want to drink it because of how it tasted or how it smelled. But arsenic does not have that. So that was a big concern. When a public water system is above the MCL for arsenic, we do require a public notification to the residents. And in this case, we insisted that the notice was translated in Spanish so that all the residents could understand it. The park manager / owner, he wasn't very attentive to residents, and he didn't really care to explain that this issue was very serious. And so we referred the system to enforcement. We had to get the system on like an agreed schedule to install treatment. And we kind of followed that same formula: increased inspections, working with the owner to get an engineering firm that could help him draw up the plans for a new treatment system. And final outcome here is that a green sand filtration treatment was installed, and it removed the arsenic down to below the MCL. Okay, so this is another one, and this should be a theme to you guys now, that mobile home parks, because as an inspector, I worked at a lot of mobile home parks. So we have a lot of them here. And this particular park, it was one near and dear to my heart, very small park. They had nitrate contamination. And some of the health effects of water with nitrates are increased risk of thyroid disease, colon cancer, blue baby syndrome, and birth defects. It usually comes from like fertilizer, and it could even come from like a wastewater plant. And this park was surrounded by farmlands, and they also had septic, so that was definitely an issue. But again, we follow the same formula: increase inspections, NOVs, enforcement referral. We even presented funding options to help them get into compliance, and they eventually got a new well and a new treatment system. They were able to locate the well in an area that it was more protected and not as affected by the nitrate concentrations in the groundwater in the area. And for that, we had to work with our geologists at the agency, and then also an engineering firm to make sure that the well would be protected. Okay, so in 2019, I became the enforcement supervisor for the division. And in this role, it's basically a continuation of enforcement cases that I'd initiate based on when I was a field inspector. The enforcement staff actually takes those cases and then writes enforcement actions. We have many different enforcement actions. One of the most popular ones that people know about is director's final findings and orders, which will more than likely involve penalties. So in conjunction with our attorneys, we meet with the water system and we try to establish a timeline and steps for them to return to compliance. And sometimes this even involves trials and court cases. So yes, I've been to court. I've had to testify at least once. But yeah, it's a part of the job. But we try to resolve everything as much as possible through negotiations. One of our big cases just came to an end. Or at least we just got a judgment. It was a public water system that had been impacted by a salt company that wasn't properly storing its salt. And so large amounts of that salt seeped into the ground and actually contaminated the aquifer where the well took water from. So the salt company owner was ordered to pay penalties so the water system could get another well, but then also to clean up the contamination in the groundwater there, which can be really difficult to do. But after years of litigation, negotiations, meetings, et cetera, we finally just received a judgment in April of $5.6 million. So that was a huge case. Most of our cases are not that long and they don't yield that many penalties. Most of it is smaller water systems that just need to be put on a schedule to come back into compliance with our rules. All right, so in 2022, I became the environmental manager of the compliance assurance section, which is under the umbrella of the compliance. The enforcement is under the umbrella of compliance, but then we also have the rules process for the division because all of our rules have to be reviewed every 5 years and then go through the entire process of public commenting and responding to those public hearings, et cetera. We also administer most of the chemical compliance programs for the division. So like VOCs, SOCs, IOCs, disinfection byproducts. So some of the contaminants under that umbrella that we do compliance for the whole state is like arsenic, nitrate, disinfection byproducts, et cetera, et cetera. But we do a lot of outreach to our public water systems so that they can stay in compliance. We have like automated robocalls, emails, phone calls. And then we also do like the consumer confidence report. You guys may have seen this like in your water bill once a year. Community water systems are required to do this. They're basically, they have to formulate a report that tells you everything that's in your water. Most of those you can find online, and we at the agency can also help you find them if you don't know where it is or your water utility. But my group reviews those reports and makes sure that they contain accurate information. So this is my team. We can be a silly bunch. This was like, I think maybe last year, our last staff meeting of the year. I really enjoy my team. But I'm going to give you a quick second just to chat in again. Can anyone guess the most challenging part of my job now?
All right, nothing yet. No,
Okay,
Gus is supervising.
yes. Okay. I'm going to keep going. I know my time is getting low, but it's definitely personnel. As a manager, my job now is making sure other employees have what they need to do their jobs, supporting and building up the team. It's really made me better at listening and addressing conflict and trying to understand people's motivations and feelings, and also building a stronger team. But definitely it's the most challenging part. Okay, so when we talk diversity in water, I want to be specific because there's all these, types of diversity in the world. But when it comes to racial diversity in our industry, it stands out the most because it's what we see immediately. And in that regard, it's very much so lacking in our industry. I've had some great experiences and some not so great ones. There were mobile home parks that I was to inspect the water plant, and I get there and every single trailer is draped in huge Confederate flags. There have been trailers that have had racial slurs on them. And of course, I felt very uncomfortable and unwelcome. But again, I also got those inspections done. Even if I had to take a partner, I got those inspections done. There's also times when I have felt alone and different from everyone else in the room. And these are some of the things that I've done to kind of overcome some of this, finding a support group and a mentor, getting in organizations like NSBE or, what have you. Even just coming to events like this and seeing other people of color is extremely encouraging to me. So I am normally a participant in some of these sessions, but also be an advocate for others. I'm the only Black female manager at Ohio EPA currently that I know of. It can be a lonely feeling, so find a support group and be an advocate for others, and try to, take up other opportunities to speak to others. I try to do that, to speak to others about my career, and also when I have an opportunity to do it for kids in schools, I try to do that also. Also speak up when there are issues, just to advocate for yourself and let your work speak for yourself. It's be an expert at what you do. It's hard to ignore good work ethic and expertise. And also, reject imposter syndrome. You deserve to be in the spaces you were in. You earned it. And I have to tell myself that quite often. But there's definitely more work to be done. Since I started, I was the only Black person in the division as an environmental specialist. There's now 3 more, so there's 4, but 4 out of 150 is not quite enough. So more work definitely needs to be done. But I would just say the saying, be the person you want to meet is what I try to do. All right, I included this slide because I want to be clear that my career and my job, my occupation, that is not my whole life. My relationship with God is the most important thing in my life. Then I'd also say the relationships that I've built, the community I've built. I have very many dear friends who really help to make my life sweeter. The center picture is me celebrating my promotions with my lifelong friends. The upper left picture is a girls' trip that my high school friends took. We've been friends for 30 years now. And then many of these women here are friends from my congregation, which is a worldwide brotherhood of over 8.5 million people. And I'm just not sure where I would be without having these dear friends in my life. And I'm very, very thankful for them. So when it comes to my legacy, as we talk about diversity in water, here are some other parts of my life where, I don't try to be an engineer or a professional or a manager, but just be a good person. Again, be the person you want to meet. So this left-hand picture is of me with some of my foster kids. We're just having a morning walk before nap time. It's really rewarding to be a foster parent, and I learn something new from every child that I have. The middle picture is of me at a high school doing presentations for the class on water treatment. And here I'm showing a student how to take a chlorine residual and why that's important. And I do this because these students need to see someone who looks like them, that shows them the possibilities. Just like I had those mentors as I was growing up, I want to be the same for other kids. The right-hand bottom, that is my niece Whitney at her college graduation party. And I'm very, very proud to say she is an Ohio EPA environmental specialist in our surface water division. So again, giving back each one to each one. And then the upper right is me spending some quality time with my nieces and great nieces. And again, I just hope that they see me as a possibility of what they can do with their lives and who they can be. I didn't really have those examples, not in my family, but they will never be able to say that. And that makes me feel really good about the work I do and the accomplishments I've made. All right, so my takeaways from this, do something you enjoy, something you feel strongly about. And when you find that, go full force. You be determined to meet whatever goals you set out. And just like I did when I was working in the oil industry, don't be afraid to pivot. Go where you want to be instead of just blindly letting things choose you. And like I said in the beginning, I was first generation college in my family. I did not have a life of luxury or even what I consider to be even middle class, but your history does not define you. You can still do whatever it is that you want to do. And just lastly, make sure you enjoy your whole life. You are not your job. You are not your career, your legacy, your values, your relationships. Those are the things that will make your life enjoyable. And with that, questions. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to my career journey this evening. And if there are any questions, I will take them.
Awesome job, Tia. I understand if people need to hop off of here, we're kind of running a little bit against time, but we will take questions as long as people have questions. We did have some pre-submitted ones that we'll go to. And then if there are any additional questions people have, just ask in the chat and we'll get to it. All right. So Tia, what do you like most about your current position? We talked about some of the challenges. What do you like most about your current position?
So I would say in my current position, I am able to still help these water systems, which I know are helping the citizens of Ohio, but also that I have a lot more influence now because I am in a management leadership position. And so I really am able to help, others that are maybe interns or maybe just starting out in their career or, what have you. It's always like, as soon as I see someone, especially a person of color that comes in new to the job and they don't have anyone else, it's like I'm almost like running to them to, try to be a support for them. And so I really enjoy that, but also that we still are making sure that the citizens of Ohio have good water.
Now connected to desk.
That kind of segues into another question that was submitted. So why is diversity important in a water department, whether that be a drinking water or a wastewater team?
So, it really doesn't matter where it is. It doesn't matter what industry. Diversity is just important because it's been proven through many studies that diverse teams do better in general, but also so that, we can be inclusive of others and, you want to, the community that you serve water to, you want to, be reflective of that and sensitive to that. And so that diversity is our world. So we need to embrace it.
Absolutely. What suggestions do you have for someone who might be interested in moving into a water career on how getting involved or getting a foot in the door?
Well, it really depends, if it's a college student, then, you start taking the courses that are, science courses, especially that are going to, help you get your foot in the door, get an internship, a co-op, that kind of thing. If it's someone who is not, in college, but they just want to be in the water field, just start applying, just start, making it a point to move towards that.
Yeah.
Learn as much as you can.
Absolutely. Do you have any thoughts on changing entry level requirements? I think in the field, like they may be talking about the expectations for individuals in their first position, like kind of entering the field, maybe.
Entry level requirements with, I know some of our requirements, you have to have a bachelor's degree or certain experience or classes or things like that. I don't know that I have any thoughts about that. I think it is definitely a good basis to definitely start with a degree. We do have some positions where you can start with a 2-year degree, or you can start with a 4-year degree. But I think just learning as much as you can about the field and getting that experience. The other good thing would be water operator experience. I know that's something that I did. I didn't have to do it, but I took like the water operator course, and it's just for your learning.
Absolutely. Do you have any advice for individuals who might be, interested in applying for some of these leadership positions in the field, whether that be, like a manager, like your position, or maybe like a distribution crew leader? What kind of advice do you have to share, kind of reflection on that transition from being, maybe like a lead worker or being more like a subject matter expert and then moving more into management?
Mm-hmm. So I think the first thing is hone your craft. So make sure that, you learn as much as you can about whatever that is that you're doing, because it's very different if you work in the regulatory industry versus if you're an operator and at a plant, or different industry. So I would say that's the first thing. But then I would also say, you have all those technical skills, but you really, really have to know how to work with people. You have to be humble, and you have to be willing to make adjustments, because when you're working with different people, there's going to be so many different personalities and things that you're going to deal with that you may not have thought that you would. So be very flexible.
Absolutely. I've certainly had to use this skill in the field. So, and I imagine your position you have as well. So I'm kind of interested, do you have part of kind of what we do, whether we are water operators who are working with the public that may have a water quality complaint, or, we're working in enforcement or an inspector, is, having uncomfortable conversations with people where they might, enter into that conversation on a higher energy level. Do you have any, tips or tricks for diffusing conflicts or, those tough situations where someone's already just entering that conversation and they're on like level 10,
Yep. Yeah. Cause I've definitely dealt with that. Listen, absolutely. Just listen, and do not match energy, because you have no idea what types of stresses people are carrying, and it may not have anything to do with you. And sometimes when you kind of let people get it all out, then you can kind of figure out what the problem really is. So, yeah. And I have had to, definitely hone in on my skills of listening, because that's, it's difficult when you're not used to having to do that with so many different types of personalities.
Yeah, exactly. I think you nailed it on the not matching their energy level. I notice a lot that people will start speaking very quickly. And it's like mirroring is that concept of not mirroring their energy level, but mirroring, exhibiting like a more low, calm energy level, slowing your voice. And I do think too, like if people think that you care, or understand that you care and that you're trying to, communicate with them and really get to the heart of it, like I think that does go a long way. But yeah, I would imagine with enforcement, that you've definitely had a lot of those conversations for sure. Let's see here. Let's see, is there any people are saying that you did a really good presentation. I'm not seeing any other questions. Let me see if there's a few I want to ask you. Yeah, there's not any other questions. I think this is a good one to end up on, honestly. So for those in the community that may be listening, what do you want everyone to know about the importance and seriousness of our drinking water quality?
Oh, that's a really good one.
I know, right? It's
that's
like
a really good one.
Right?
Yeah.
We need like source water protection right now
Yeah.
to lay it out, you know.
No, that's a great one. I think the main thing I will want you to know is that there are people who are working very hard for you to have good drinking water quality. And you know, if there are any questions that you have about your drinking water or things you want to know, you can find those answers, and we're out here and we're public servants, whether it be through your utility, through Ohio EPA or what have you, the health department, we want to give that information to you. So yeah, take back the tap.
Yeah, absolutely. It's almost like a source of pride. When I was in Germany, they don't serve tap water. Like they don't bring you water with your meal like they do in the United States, you know, just with your meal. Like that's the first thing you do is bring water. And it was almost like a point of pride for me. I was like, somebody worked hard to make that drinking water, to treat it. Like, I want your tap water. Bring me some tap water, you know? So it's very, very true, Tia. You know, we all the different parts of this industry, you know, there's a lot of work and a lot of people that go into getting that water to come out of your tap, you know, reliably every single day. So absolutely. All right, awesome. Well, if there are no more questions, thank you so much everyone for joining, and especially thank you so much to Tia for your great presentation.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it, and thanks everybody.
All right, everybody, have a great night. We'll see you in a couple months. The next one.